sometimes we're at loggerheads because I'm like, let's get moving, let's go, let's do it. And he's like, whoa, hang on, just slowly. So I think we complement each other in that way. So he could take forever, whereas I want to do it now. So we kind of meet halfway.
Hello, everybody. It is Dani Valent here with you for Dirty Linen, my food podcast where I chat to people in the world of hospitality, restaurants, food, gathering around the table, all those good and delicious things. I'm really looking forward to today's chat with Laura Goldberg. Often on Dirty Linen, we chat to people in independent restaurants, small businesses, people who have scraped money together to open the doors. We don't often talk to people who run chain restaurants. So that's one reason why I really wanted to chat to Laura. She's the Chief Operating Officer of Hurricanes Grill Restaurants and has a number of other business interests. Laura came to my attention a couple of months ago when she founded a very cool Instagram account called Women in Cafes and Restaurants. I love anybody who is celebrating women in hospitality. Laura, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Hi.
Well, I've done a little bit of an introduction, but tell us about yourself.
So I actually fell into hospitality. I've got a strong retail background. My husband started Hurricanes in July, will be 30 years ago. And I sort of had 2 children, and then I wanted to go back into work quite quickly. I was really bored at home. And a position in marketing came up in his restaurant, which was great because that's my background. And, so I took the opportunity with both hands, and then here I am.
I love that.
14 years later.
Tell us what Hurricanes Grill is.
So we're a chain of steak and rib restaurants. We have, we've got quite a unique setup because my husband and his ex-business partner started Hurricanes 30 years ago, and about 14 years ago they split, and his ex-business partner kept one side and we kept the other, and he's expanded in his own way and we've expanded in our own way. So we actually own and operate 3 Sydney-based restaurants plus 2 franchises, and we are the licensees for 5 international Hurricanes restaurants.
So I know those are in Dubai, Indonesia and China. So it's really amazing to have this international spread of the brand. What would you say is the key elements of Hurricanes Grill? Like what do you pride yourselves on?
Consistency, I think, is the most important thing. So when you come to any of our side of Hurricanes, you know what you're going to get. You come in for your pork ribs, which is our specialty, but what you get today is what you're going to get tomorrow. It's what you're going to get in, hopefully 5 years' time. So consistency, definitely. And we use all Australian beef and produce, and that includes overseas, except in Dubai there are some challenges with import-export. So we use other countries' meats in that location. But China, which we're reopening, so we opened and then closed after COVID, and we're reopening, and we use all Australian beef, and that's something that we pride ourselves on.
And so the restaurants that you run yourselves, what does that mean day to day? Like, what does it feel like to be owning a Hurricanes Grill?
So in October last year, we had a catastrophic fire in our flagship restaurant, which is in Circular Quay, and we still haven't rebuilt. So it's been quite an emotional journey, just getting insurance and builders, etc. But I'm happy to report that we'll start building in the next week or so. So we'll be reopen hopefully July. But day to day, it's going in. We've got a pretty strong team, which is great. So I have 2 children, so I get my kids to school, get myself to the gym, which is really important, and then go in, answer the emails. I deal with all the functions and events. So, it's checking that if there's any functions that everything's in order, that kind of thing. And just we're constantly looking for specials. We're constantly looking at how we can improve our offering. Especially with the cost of living crisis. I think we find, it is challenging because we're sort of not fine dining and we're not fast food, so we sit somewhere in the middle. So it's just constantly refining our offering to people.
Wow, Laura, I had no idea about the fire. That's so devastating. Was it something that happened during service?
It was during service, but it's quite strange. It was a fire that was in the ducting of the roof of the building, so not in the kitchen. It was in the kitchen, but not caused by our grill or anything like that. And because they couldn't find the source of the fire, we had 60 firefighters, 30 fire trucks come in and just basically pour water into the ducting to see where they could, to put the fire out. So we actually had a flood, not a fire.
Oh, my goodness. You just never know what is around the corner in restaurant land, do you?
No. And that's it. And that's one of the reasons why I founded Women in Cafes and Restaurants, because while I was going through this emotional roller coaster, I didn't have anywhere to turn to. And I thought, well, who do I go to? I need a support system of people who could understand what I was going through.
That's so interesting. So why did you focus on women in that when you were feeling alone?
Because I think the whole industry is pretty male dominated, and I think men don't, and this is a generalization, of course, men don't feel the need to share their emotions and how they're feeling and everything. And I felt like I was, my husband was going through obviously his own thing and I was going through my own thing, but I wanted to share, whereas he doesn't really want to share that much or vent, whereas I did. And I just wanted to talk to someone who could say, oh, I also had a fire and this is what, we did. And I felt there was this real gap of just emotional support, not necessarily about fire, but just emotional support that I was looking for.
Wow, it's so interesting because, when the account popped up on my feed, it was very positive. So there wasn't like people sharing their sob stories. It was about, really showcasing people who are just working hard day to day, not necessarily in senior roles. It's, the barista, it's the front of house professional, but they're not like high flyers necessarily. Tell us about, what your approach was and the stories that you decided to tell.
I wanted to tell the stories mostly of the people that probably worked in the restaurants as opposed to owned it, because we had a lot of people that we had to stand down in our restaurants. And I thought, well, they've all got a story, right? So they've all got something going on in their lives. And here their work, even if it's part-time, has been taken away from them. So I wanted to highlight those people that, have other stuff going on in their lives, maybe just work in hospitality part-time. And I wanted to keep it positive because I was in such a negative mindset. I wanted to really uplift other people because that's my love language. I like to uplift people. And I thought, well, how am I going to do this without bringing people down into my how I was feeling emotionally? So I've done it, and it's actually been so refreshing to listen to all these amazing women. It's quite insane.
That's so interesting and lovely. Like, well, what is it about talking to these other people that's made you feel better?
I think we all share a common love of people. And that's come through quite strongly with most of the women that I've been dealing with. Everybody loves people. They love the connections that they get within the restaurant. They're all cafe or being a barista. And I think that's what I loved is just knowing that we all share that same passion of connection with people.
And do you think, from these conversations you've been having and your overall experience, do you think women look for different things in hospitality than men do, whether it's as workers or as customers?
Absolutely. I think of the women that I've spoken to, community is very important. There's a huge amount of and maybe because I'm not speaking to the men, but there's a large portion of them that give back to their communities, which stood out for me. And I think that a lot of women join hospitality because they have that innate nurturing, giving back feeling within themselves. So a lot of, and not one of the women that I spoke to, and I've done, 17 women are like, I'm doing it for the money, which I loved.
And what is there anyone that stands out to you? Anyone that you can tell us about?
I actually featured a lady yesterday. So she's just starting her journey. She is she's a therapist, and she is starting a cafe in the Whitsundays, which is going to be it's imminently opening. And what she wanted, it was to have neurodiverse people be able to come in and feel textures and taste foods with texture and have that element of therapy within her cafe, which I just loved, because neurodivergent is a word that it's almost, you hear it all the time now. And I just thought, that's such a safe space for women to go into, or men, or kids especially.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, sometimes you see in, supermarkets or other like shopping centres or cinemas will have sessions where there's less visual and audio stimulation for people who perhaps react find that difficult to cope with, or someone that they're with finds it difficult to cope with. So I suppose we're getting better as a society at including people who have different needs and abilities. But I've never heard of a cafe doing that. That's so extraordinary, and yeah, I need to get her on the show as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it just stood out for me because she was so nervous to approach me, and I said to her, I just love what you're doing, because it's so unique within Australia, I suppose. I've never ever heard of anything like that. So yeah, she was really nervous, and she was like, I don't know if if I'm ready yet. And I'm like, oh, you're ready. You're ready.
I love that. We all need our champions in this world. It's really interesting as you speak, Laura. You're running the business with your husband. You're the COO. But you also talk about these different approaches that men and women have, including, different ways that your husband and yourself have dealt with the aftermath of this devastating fire/flood. How do you go running the business together? Do you bring different things to it? Do you sort of work side by side, or do you have very set roles? How do you work all that?
We have to have set roles. Otherwise, we sort of just merge into one, and then we're all doing the same thing in a different way. So he's definitely, he deals with the paperwork, the financials, that kind of thing. I'm more the creative side. I do menus. I do that kind of thing. And I think it works well for us as a couple. Otherwise, if you're doing the same thing, you kind of get... you can be at loggerheads because you have different ideas. He lets me do my thing. I let him do his thing. And we come together. You work with your husband, and you always say, oh, no, we have time where we don't talk shop. But that's not really true. We're always talking shop.
Yeah, I think I think everyone's going to work that differently in their relationship when they're partners in business and life. But it's really interesting. Like, what kind of, have you had any tricky moments where you've been working your way through a situation in the business where your approaches have perhaps been different and it's been hard to communicate?
Yeah. I am fiery and spontaneous, and I'll just do things. My husband's a thinker. He's a planner. He really researches things a lot, which kind of drives me a little bit crazy sometimes. So, yeah, sometimes we're at loggerheads because I'm like, let's get moving, let's go, let's do it. And he's like, whoa, hang on, just slowly. So I think we complement each other in that way. So he could take forever, whereas I want to do it now. So we kind of meet halfway.
You mentioned that consistency is a really important aspect of Hurricane's Grill, but you also have these restaurants overseas that are licensed locations. What kinds of, how do you make sure that the brand is being represented the way you want it?
Communication is key. And we've been really, really lucky with our licensees in Jakarta and in Dubai, that they speak English. China was difficult because it was our restaurant, not a licensee, because of the language barrier. But communication is always 100% key, and also having systems, and policies and procedures that people have to follow. It's quite key.
What have you found different in the industries in those different territories?
I think cultural is always something, and sometimes people who purchase licenses don't want to bring their own spin into things, which is not really, then you need to open your own restaurant, is what I always say. You've sort of, you want Hurricanes because you know what we're going to give you, the branding, recipes, etc., etc. If you want to change that, then that's sort of on you. Then you need to open your own. So it's been quite clear with what we stand for, what our company values are, how we expect our food to be prepared. We use the same basting across the board, overseas and here, and that is one of the key elements to Hurricanes. Is that's what we're famous for, is our basting. So everybody has to use it.
So without giving away any state secrets, I mean, is it a recipe that's created in those different places, or something that you're shipping around the place?
So we're shipping. So we don't give the recipe to anyone. My father-in-law developed the recipe about 50 years ago, and it's tightly held in his safe. So we don't even have the recipe. He still makes it for us.
Oh my goodness! So it's in the will to be passed down when that distant time comes. It's all very
clandestine, right? But yeah, and he's still very active in the business. He does all our repairs and maintenance. He does all our basting sauces. So, he's key for us.
That's so interesting. What do you reckon makes a good basting?
Oh, I think it's got to be the right amount of sticky, and it can't be too runny, because sometimes if it's too runny, it doesn't sort of soak into the meat and make it, that's what gives the meat the flavor. So it's about consistency, and it's about, and that's where it's been quite tricky overseas, because sometimes, we're not always there, and someone wants to add a little bit of water to make the basting last longer, and then it just doesn't have that same flavor. So we've had to do a few trips overseas on the quiet to keep people on their toes, but that's the fun part, actually.
What's fun about that?
Oh, it's just, I get to travel, and I love traveling. I've just a background, my parents have a luggage and leather store in South Africa, so we traveled a lot as youngsters. So it's in my blood. I love to travel. So when I can get on a plane and go to Dubai or Jakarta or China, I love it.
Well, I guess when you've grown up in the world of luggage, you've got to be packing a bag and getting on a plane or a boat pretty often to make use of it. I mean, what do you think, Laura? You've as you say, you've worked in luggage. You also told me you were a personal trainer working with corporate clients. You've done a lot of different things. Like, what are the threads that you can take into any industry, and what are the things that are specific to hospitality?
Because my background is obviously retail, but I did a degree in communication and psychology, and that has carried me so far within my personal training, within working with a large amount of staff. It's reading people, it's being empathetic, it's really listening to other people, and that's the common thread, is just being able to listen, because we're quite quick to talk first and listen later.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So where does that fit in hospitality, do you think?
Because we have such a vast amount, we've got about, right at the minute, about 120 staff, going up to, when Circular Quay opens, up to about 200. There's all different cultures and backgrounds and people, and you have to be able to listen to each one and listen to what they have to say to be able to get the best out of them.
That's really, I like that. Laura, you also told me that you were a winner in the Women Changing the World Awards in London. Tell us what that is.
So Women Changing the World is an organisation that's founded by two Australian women that are based in Townsville, I think. There's a lady from Zimbabwe called Tara Trent, and there is the Duchess of York, who is the patron. And basically it's a group of women who come together, and it's how they're changing the world in small and big ways. We have some, amazing philanthropists that have won prizes, and I like to think that I've contributed somehow to hospitality within Australia and around the world with our franchises, and it's just making a difference in people's lives, I think.
Yeah. Well, so how do you feel like you're making a difference?
I always try my best to listen to people, as I said before, and I think that makes a difference, because a lot of people aren't heard, and a lot of people are in the background, and they're the workers and the grinders, and they're the ones that are there every day, probably fighting my battle. They're on the front line, so I like to listen and hear what they have to say. I like to hear their backstories, because sometimes it just gets lost.
Yeah, I think you never know how you can, the power that you have to change someone else's life. And obviously it starts with listening and understanding them and knowing what motivates and drives them. So, you've got this account, Women in Cafes and Restaurants. Like, what change do you hope that it will bring?
What I'm hoping that it will bring is for women to accept recognition, because I think we all, there's a bit of tall poppy in our industry, and nobody sort of wants to put their hand up to say, oh, look, I'm doing something amazing. So it's for those people who are quietly doing amazing things in the background, and those are the ones that I want to really highlight. I would like to think that by giving someone a little bit of a boost, you never know where it's going to propel them next.
Yeah, well, I think if we go back to your earlier example of the woman starting the cafe that accounts for neurodiverse people, you just think, well, if someone sees someone else fulfilling a bright idea, maybe it'll give them the confidence to take the next step in their own plan.
Definitely. And also to realise that we are a community of women, and hospitality it's tricky. Our hours are different to other people's. We've got a whole bunch of negativity that follows us around, and some of it definitely self-inflicted. But I think especially around women and how we're treated within the industry. So, if I can get past some of that negativity and show hospo in its glory, maybe we won't have such a negative and reputation anymore.
Well, I suppose it's a balance between highlighting the good but also dealing with the bad, and I think there's definitely, both are extremely important. There's been so much in the news that we've covered on this podcast and that I've written about, and so many others have as well, that around like devastating discrimination and sometimes assault or sexual assault of women in hospitality, women and other people, but certainly women tend to experience the worst of it. But I think, where do you see that balance between airing the negative and the positive? So
when I first started Women in Cafes and Restaurants, the whole Swill House thing was happening, and I was like, where is the industry representative for women? Why is no one speaking up? Why are we not collectively as an industry saying, hang on a second, this isn't acceptable, this shouldn't be happening? And I suppose I didn't want to be an advocacy group, but I don't I'm not saying I'm not going to be an advocacy group. I believe that one of the questions that I ask most of the women that I've interviewed before is what can we do as an industry to support women better? And it is something that I think about often. So I'm not saying I'm not going to do it, because I do believe there needs to be a voice that stands up and says, hang on a second, the things that we're dealing with is not acceptable.
You're making me reflect on what you said earlier, Laura, about, you just have an idea and you run with it, you want to get going. And I feel like, that's what you've done with this account, perhaps, where you just wanted to do something and this is what you've done, but you're also feeling your way into what it might become.
Yep. Absolutely. I've had people DM me, what about this, what about that, which, I'm taking it all on board, and I'm trying to take my husband's strategy of just nice and slow, just trying to feel my way around what this is going to look like. I am launching my website in the next week, and there's going to be great. I've got a blog, I've got all bits of resources and things like that. So it is turning into something which I think is going to be amazing, because I think the industry is crying out for just some support.
Yeah, well, definitely we'll be watching that space. Laura, just finally, you've got this quite complex business. It spans different countries. Some of them are owned, some of them are licensed. I wonder, what could smaller businesses learn from what you do?
My biggest take home is aligning yourself with the right people. Making sure that whatever work that you're doing, whether it's small or large, is making sure that your partners, the people you work for, the people you work with, are all on the same page and have the same values as you, because that takes you much further than anything else. You need to make sure that they believe the same things that you believe.
Well, I suppose, before you can do that, you need to know your own values and be able to express them.
Yes, 100%. So you need to know where you are, and once you know and you have a clear goal, which my husband and I have sat down and we've done this a lot, and sometimes we bring our kids into it, and every year we sit down and we say, okay, what are our goals as a family? What are our goals as a business? And once you've got that, it makes it much easier to express that to other people, and especially business partners.
I think, as a diner, I think you can feel that clarity in a business. And as you say, you're so focused on staff and them being able to share the message as well, or feel involved in it. I think you can really tell when that work has been done. Laura, so good to talk to you. I'm excited to watch the development of women in cafes and restaurants. And obviously I need to come and have some ribs at some point. Tell me what I'm going to eat when I come to Hurricanes Grill.
So you're going to start out with our Louisiana wings. That's our most popular entree. It's delicious, a little bit spicy, a little bit sweet. It's, deep fried. It's all the good stuff. And then you're going to have our signature pork ribs. You wouldn't believe it, but we're quite famous for our sweet potatoes. So you'll have that with sweet potatoes. To finish, you're going to have either a sticky date or a chocolate pudding. And then you're definitely going to have one of our cocktails. And we have a South African sort of cocktail dessert called a Don Pedro, which is like a milkshake with Kahlua. So that's my ideal meal.
Oh, I'm going to roll all the way home. And you know what? I can even feel my sticky fingers as you run me through that experience. It sounds very delightful. Laura, so great to chat to you. Thanks for coming on Dirty Linen. I will be following your account with interest, and send any people that need to be on the podcast my way. We can do some of this work together.
And same for you, or anyone that's sort of listening. If you know someone in a cafe or restaurant that you think, oh, wow, she really is phenomenal, I'd love to get her name out there, just shoot me a DM. Love to feature people all across Australia.
Love that, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.